Good morning, everyone. My name is Ramona Archer Bradshaw, Chief Education Officer, Ministry of Educational Transformation in this beautiful island of Barbados. So welcome again. And it is my distinct pleasure to moderate this session, which looks at the partnership for student success. And it specifically looks at ministers, parents, and CXC working together for the student success. Now, there's an African proverb. It says that the child who is not embraced by the village will burn it down to feel its warmth. We know that our children are not on this journey alone, so it is our shared responsibility to ensure that they reach the highest heights. As moderator, I encourage you to think critically about what will be presented here and to ask questions, share ideas, and let us come together to strengthen this village. We need to ensure that we have strong, informed support for all of our children. So at this point in time, I'm happy to introduce you to three persons who will help us to shape the discussion this morning. We have Dr. Eduardo Ali, who's the Pro-Registrar and Deputy CEO of CXC. He's the head of the Western Zone Office in Jamaica. He strategically leads educational transformation projects with key regional and international partners and stakeholders, experiential events, ministerial summits, product marketing, qualifications management, educational research, data governance, and capacity building for educational professionals. Dr. Ali is an education strategic planner, policy development, partnerships, and accreditation professional. His 30-year career has positioned him in C-suite and technical roles in the Caribbean, North America, and the Middle East, with governments, universities, accreditation agencies, and development partners in education. We also have with us this morning Dr. Nicole Manning. She's the Director of Operations at CXC, and she is stationed at the headquarters in Barbados. She provides leadership for the assessment services at the Council, and this includes oversight for assessment development and all related quality and risk management requirements and customer stakeholder engagements. With over 30 years of experience in education, she has made significant contributions in assessment, quality assurance, and accreditation. She has served on regional education and quality assurance boards, as well as worked on several education projects across the regions with different international organizations. We also have Mrs. Sherry Deslandis, who's the Director of Corporate Services at CXC. She's stationed at the headquarters in Barbados as well, and Mrs. Deslandis has oversight of strategy, financial procurement, human resources, and office management, ensuring that CXC is the organization par excellence. She has a wealth of experience across the region in financial management and HR, having been engaged with private and public sector organizations in the hospitality and education sector. So I'm going to ask you to give all three of them a round of applause. I will invite Dr. Ali and Dr. Manning to make their presentation first, and they will subsequently be joined by Mrs. Deslandis, and we will open the floor for dialogue. And after this rich dialogue, we will close the session with a clarified vision and renewed purpose. So over to you, Dr. Ali.
Yes. Good morning, everyone. Good morning, honorable ministers. It's a pleasure to see you all again after we've had our beautiful time together in Dominica, for those who were there, as well as those education officials who have joined us from the various countries. And colleagues all, we have had experience over the last 2 days, I think, that has brought us to a point where we need to really build collectively on the gains that we have had over the last 2 days. The presentation that both my colleague and I, Dr. Manning, would be engaged in is looking at the value of parents as critical stakeholders and what CXC is doing generally in this regard. So I'm going to speak to the strategic repositioning, the perspective that CXC has embraced in terms of a regional model that focuses on engaging parents and how our governance approach proceeds with that in mind. And Dr. Manning will come in the end, and she will talk about stakeholder relationships and what we're doing specifically to engage stakeholders and parents and guardians as we add value. So I think most people here, particularly those who are educators in the room and have been exposed to this author, Paulo Freire, a Brazilian philosopher, who in 1970, writing on his thesis of the pedagogy of the oppressed, made a very profound statement. And that statement is one of liberation in terms of the educational experience being liberated and the need for ensuring that those persons who are educated are truly liberated and do not become oppressed through the education experience, lest they become the oppressors. And what we've seen in our society today is a number of persons who are disengaged in the education system for a variety of reasons become oppressors, whether they become parents or they're youths who are plaguing our societies because they're disenfranchised. And so the dream really is for us to have a liberated society, one that engages all actors collectively, recognizing that there are gains to be had from parents being actively involved, educators collaborating, and educational authorities and enterprises that are working in harmony through various perspectives, sharing various perspectives and engagements to support and empower children and youth. So CXC has been engaged in contemplating for a few years now many ideas concerning reforms in the education space. And so we have been looking at a wholes of society approach to transformation in education. We recognize that as one agency, and there are many other actors, both at the regional and working with the national levels, there are going to be various considerations that need to be brought to bear. And so we have been taking cues from research, gathering data, getting stakeholder feedback, and engaging in our own perspectives that would contribute to our strategic repositioning. And so the future of education embraces the citizenry and what we need for good citizens who are making an impact in our societies, developing the entrepreneurial capacity, whether we talk about TVET or other means for developing the entrepreneurs who are in our region, and of course looking at the future of jobs and what is required, and Dr. Bristol would have elaborated on some of that earlier on. So with that entire approach facilitates quality education and lifelong learning for all that are aligned to SDG 4, supporting those who are both in and out of school through flexible and digital education mechanisms, providing an assessment experience that is truly liberating and transformative, that impacts not just the child who is in the classroom, or the youth or the adult who is participating in an assessment, but it prepares people for lives because assessment matters. And of course, our improved and expanded governance and stakeholder relationships, which Dr. Manning will speak to a little later on to some degree. So CXC has been repositioning, and as we reposition, we have started to look at what the world would possibly look like, and certainly our region, by garnering research data concerned with the futures of education and prioritizing what the 2030 and 2050 scenarios would look like for education in our region and in the wider world. Taking cognizance of that, these have been guiding principles supporting CXC in its innovations and change as it conceptualizes new models and new approaches, some of which we have begun on course with, others we have not yet, because we have to ensure that we are prepared to engage the stakeholders in the region positively in that regard. We have also reviewed our midterm strategic plan, which is about to be concluded this year, and of course have gone on course with a new strategic plan, which we are putting in place to address some of the critical needs to engage our stakeholders. So what are the key drivers to success of CXC as we reposition? Our repositioning strategy embraces three components that are all intertwined in the way we do business. And that is what we refer to as the modernization of governance. We recognize that we've inherited an agreement that was established many years ago. There are some areas or aspects of that agreement that do not work for modern society, and so we need to modernize that agreement and modernize also the way in which that works across the ecosystem, recognizing that CXC is a CARICOM institution set up by CARICOM governments to support CARICOM member states and associate members. And in that regard, we have to work collectively to ensure that policy priorities that are established, whether it is at the level of CARICOM or the OECS, are supporting the mechanisms that CXC is putting in place to ensure that we deliver the quality products and services to our stakeholders in the region. And so we have reimagined what we refer to as a qualifications philosophy that looks at flexible learning and flexible education, that ensures that assessment matters in a very authentic way, and we have also reimagined what that would look like, and I suspect Dr. Manning would speak to some of that, either in her presentation or in the discourse that follows. And equally so, we recognize that we need to be fit for purpose. Mrs. Deslandes, I believe, would also speak to some of the aspects of organizational redesign that focuses on that in particular. So the modernization of governance looks at expanding the base for stakeholder representation, including expertise for prudent oversight across the region, ensuring that the appropriate committees or board organs that exist that would support the policy mandates that are established for CARICOM, and that we take cues to ensure that what we put in place matters for what stakeholders want in the region. So our regional mechanism. Our regional mechanism we had proposed, and we are glad to see that we are in that space, is a regional parent-teacher body that would facilitate engagement of national PTAs, which would obviously create a mechanism by which school-based parent-teacher associations would be collaborating to support each other at the member state or associate member state level, all feeding up into a regional PTA. And we believe that this is very critical, and we've heard all the reasons why that is critical over the last 2 days and certainly today. And so CXC, in its consideration of the dynamic that we face, we, as you know, being an agency of the state, and by the state I mean all member states, we have an agreement that establishes what we do, gives us the mandate by which we operate, provides the mechanisms by which we engage all our stakeholders. We know that we are nested within the frame of what CARICOM does in regards education through the Council of Human and Social Development, and therefore, to a large extent, what we do has to interface with, support that mechanism where CARICOM has its own policy bodies. But at the same time, sitting on our council, we do have representation as an independent body to support member states in the execution of the syllabuses and examinations we offer, and also any capacity building support to enable those syllabuses and examinations that are offered to be done and done well. And so, in the broader context of things, what we envisage is, in fact, two various arms or pathways to success where parent-teachers bodies can be engaged at the level of CXC. So at the level of our Board of Governors, we have, in fact, our governance committees. There's a School Examinations Committee and the national committees. For those who are aware, national committees are a critical component of the fabric of CXC that engages with all stakeholders, including parent-teachers associations, at the national level. That is the opportunity whereby PTAs can provide the required support to enable those individuals to provide the kind of feedback that is needed in the ecosystem. I apologize, the slides took a little beyond where it was supposed to. But for us, national committees are critical. They are your committees. They are the committees where you sit and you contribute to what is happening at the national level that feeds up to the governance level at CXC. But equally so, we believe that at the level of governance, there's an opportunity for parents to be engaged on CXC's council through the regional body that has now been formalized to sit at that level to make policy and support what is required for the region. And so as we revise our agreement, and we are undergoing that exercise as we speak, we have made room for the CCPTA, NPTA, to be involved as a body within the frame of CXC decision-making at the level of council. So I wanted to make that announcement. And that would help provide that mechanism also at the regional level for discourse and decision-making. So as I've said, there are two levels. There's a level at the national level where there's engagement through your ministries of education, where discourse can take place to feed into policy, and we recognize that pathway. But at the level of CXC, there's also an opportunity for engagement at the national level through our national committees, and at the regional level through our governance committee, the School Examinations Committee. And so I will end this part of my presentation by saying, and this goes to a quote that was made previously by Dr. Bristol in the Journal of Education Policy. This is a 2021 article by Gerard and Savage, she would have also quoted, that says schooling reforms should construct new governing relationships involving what she referred to as the parent-citizen, and this article also referred to the educator dynamic for social production. In other words, we cannot be a productive society bringing the value that we need to add to the lives of children and youth without having a newly constructed governing relationship. And CXC is committed to that effort. Thank you very much. Dr. Manning?
Good morning to our honorable ministers, our chair. Let me just say thanks for this opportunity, parents, teachers, and all other partners, social partners. It is indeed a pleasure for us to be here and to have this dialogue. As we proceed, I'll just pick up on one point Dr. Ali made in relation to that word, relationships. It's absolutely important that as we have this dialogue, that we understand and really embrace the fact that we have to have this relationship. If it is that we're going to see our children and the change that we want to see for our future, it's critical that we see the outputs from this relationship. And so within the educational ecosystem, in alignment with that, we have various relationships. Dr. Ali outlined clearly CXC's governance, and I just want to add one component. At the top of this relationship circle that you're seeing here, you'll see the ministries of education, higher education institutions, and that LR stands for our local registrars. Now, the construct, how CXC is built, is that CXC does not, in the past, directly engage with our stakeholders on the ground. Ever since, over the last 5 years, we have changed that. And you're going to see me use the word change very often, as you would have seen Dr. Ali also doing, because that's where we are heading. As you know, many persons may know that strong word, Kaizen. It means continuous improvement. And as a body and as a region, the governance for CXC is looking at how we can make that change, that transformation that is necessary for us to ensure that the individuals we have in the center, whether we call them our learners, or students, candidates, or our children, it's important that everyone around this circle make the changes that's required. So our local registrars are usually sitting within the ministries of education. These are your individuals within the ministries of education that interface directly every day with our teachers, our principals, our parents. And as such, it is important to understand how they operate. So it is indeed a pleasure for CXC to now have the CCNPTA and that direct link that we had with, for example, CUT. I don't know how many persons know, but CUT, they do attend our council meetings as observers, yes, but they do have a voice. The employers likewise. And so we're adding the CCNPTA. We're looking forward to continued working with the students. I know that CDB will move forward to work with us on that. In line with that, we have when we speak about our parents and guardians, but there is a responsible community. Our chair mentioned it earlier, Dr. Ramona Archer Bradshaw. And it's important to understand that's how we grew up. It was a village. It's a community, and everyone in that community has a responsibility. And so, whether it's our principals and teachers, whether it's our social development partners, our IDB, CDB, whoever it is, and our employers, this group, we as a whole, we are coming together to ensure that we protect and keep that inner group and also to relate to them. So as parents, I am a parent also, we are committed, I know. I'm starting there because I want us, as I speak, to understand that we have various responsibilities. So as I flow, I want you to embrace the fact that as stakeholders, what CXC is saying is that you may correct, instruct, guide, relate to us in different ways. And so we have to engage you, and we have to understand what that engagement looks like. So I'm going to share a few pointers where we get formal feedback from our stakeholders. And you'll hear me say this from the beginning to the end. This is necessary. If we do not hear from you, then that Kaizen I spoke about earlier, continuous improvement will not happen. And as a village, you have to speak to each other. You have to speak with each other. And so this was one of we embraced it as a council when we heard from our retired principal during that period where we had our various difficult times. It wasn't for CXC alone, but other places. And so we got this after, how did you get through it? And we thank him for this kind of assurance. The standards chair for Ofqual, United Kingdom, when they invited us to sit on the chair on the committee for the International Assessment Association, one of the things he pointed out is that he was very happy that, yes, we did that independent review. I'm not sure how many persons remember, but CXC has included what we call our Assessment and Risk Management Committee, a lot of different engines to keep us accountable. And these persons do not sit within CXC, they sit outside of CXC to keep us accountable. And this was one of our partners, and I would say, dare to say, actually a competitor, who is writing to say to us that this is something that they saw us happening, they were happy that we did it, and we were able to stand where that was concerned. I'm not sure about if I'm going to hear the sound on this, but I can tell you that CXC works with the evaluating companies. Now, it's very important, as you know, that if your children, our children, are going to move, whether it's to employment or to higher education or to create their own business space, sometimes their qualifications need to be evaluated. And this was a testimony from one of our evaluators to say to us that what we are doing is well done, and they're happy about that. It's critical that you know that too, because many times persons say to us, we want information much quicker than you are getting it. And we had to change how we operated where that is concerned. We have situation parents where we send the results of your children, if you approve of that, directly to the universities and quickly in other ways. So this is very critical for you as we work with them. CXC does nothing without ensuring that every qualification is approved by our evaluators, universities, and employers. Of course, this is just another testament of working with various bodies. I'm showing you Anguilla, Barbados, Jamaica, and of course, I want to highlight what happens with our employers. With the change that is happening at CXC and the transformation, which I'll speak a little bit more shortly, it's important to note that this, when we spoke with the employees, and this one I think stood out very well, so I'm highlighting it, that the Human Resource Management Association of Trinidad and Tobago, they published this article all on their own quickly. And one of the points we want to make is the flexibility that they are embracing with us, flexibility of the approach that we're taking, and how they see it as more inclusive, adaptable, and growth-oriented way of operating. They see it as how we are going to ultimately cultivate a better equipped workforce with labor market needs and capable of driving regional economic development. And this is where the bottom line, whether we are creating employment or whether we are being employed, it's important that the transformation hits right here. I also want to add that CXC in its transformation heard the voices of the regional consciousness for curriculum reform. And so we are not only doing the classical products, but we are making those changes as we heard the voices. And so, as we intend to work with our parents, guardians, to provide value for our children, I wanted to highlight a few things. My colleagues that spoke about the disability component, we prefer to call it exceptionalities, because you do have persons who perform at different levels, and we do not agree necessarily with identifying, but supporting these individuals. We don't want to pull out anyone in terms of separating. But I want to start on that left side, where CXC has created a dedicated portal. And parents, if you don't know this portal, I'm asking you to please go on and embrace with your children this particular portal. So for example, sometimes people will ask about a simple thing as a timetable. CXC actually publishes your 2026 timetable from 2025. You really don't even have to wait on that timetable to hit you. What we're saying is, as we create various solutions, it's important that we embrace what is happening with your children, with our children, through this portal. Electronic solutions, CXC has gone in terms of our digital transformation, and we have created many solutions. So as it was, I think we heard it in terms of persons having different challenges or impairments, whatever we want to call it. And so one of the big points we're making is that this electronic solution was critical for persons who needed to hear on their own. So for example, we use JAWS to create our exams. A person who may not be able to see, but you can put on a headphone and you can hear. Someone who doesn't need to have somebody by their side in terms of reading for them, but they feel empowered because we have created electronic solutions for your children where they can by themselves feel empowered to listen while they do the exams. That is the focus and the drive we have. Thirdly, on that side, facilitating student advancement. And that is very important as we do different types of credentialing. Micro-credentialing, where we speak about the small components, and the larger full qualification. Secondly, this is very important as parents, that we look at how we are engaged. It's not about preparing for that final assessment. It's about the skills that are inherent in what happens as they build those competencies. And probably because I also have a very strong technical and vocational background. And I believe, as the president for Cantor mentioned yesterday, because CXC is a part of that also, as we offer the Caribbean vocational qualification, that if we do not build the skills, the competencies, and recognize these competencies, whether they be occupational and whether they be employability skills, this is where that happens. Thirdly, we offer the quality awards to you, our stakeholders, and as we relate to you, we're saying that these are not only internationally recognized, but we're changing how we do those, because our new product that's coming out on the market, and thankfully I must say to the honorable ministers who are here, that while we only needed 3,000 students to pilot, we have gotten over 4,000 requests, and also we know we have from one territory over another 6,000. So the point I really want to make is that this new product, the Caribbean Targeted Education Certificate, is going to break the CSEC in modules, break the CAPE that's already in modules, but offer that flexibility to our students. So think of an engineer who they're doing the subjects that they would normally do, but that engineer wants to be an entrepreneur, and they just need a component to do business planning. That's where this will take them. But take another student who wants to do various components because they want to pace themselves. This will take them there also, because they would not have to do the entire syllabus all at once. They can do it in small components. So parents, we have heard and we are asking you to speak to us, continue to help us as we work with governments also to create other recognized programs. And recently we did a certification with the British Virgin Islands in customer service. So what I'm saying is, and I think the Minister of Educational Transformation spoke in the opening ceremony for Barbados, spoke in the opening ceremony about leadership. And if it is that a territory wants to create that new product in leadership, it may be different for Barbados or Grenada or St. Kitts. And what we're saying is we can partner with you to create that certification and to recognize those competencies. Last but not least, CXC is working with various partners to help the ministries to do their data analytics, to understand the students, and to ensure that as we understand through our longitudinal framework, that we know how to assist the process. CXC is not leaving it there. There are support tools that we're providing, and we are guiding and protecting our children. While we have our policy framework to help the ministries to create their own policy, we also provided what we call our standards and guidelines for the use of artificial intelligence in CXC assessment. But this can also be used in every situation in terms of schools and with our teachers. Parents, generative artificial intelligence is not, well, artificial intelligence has been around from 1958, but generative artificial intelligence is what is new. And it's important, I'm going to give one plug, that you make sure that your children do not place their personally identifiable information in any platform, protecting our children. And so this guideline is on the website for you to read and for you to utilize, because CXC has embraced artificial intelligence because it is here to stay. But we're saying, let us help them to use responsibly. Concluding, we're having a conference the end of this month, and at that conference, I'm looking forward to seeing our newly minted executive CC and PTA. And it's very important that your voices are heard. Digital transformation, teaching, learning, and assessment, but a big focus on mathematics. This is something that we'll be doing a deep dive and a big conversation. We have the University of the West Indies, we have the Commonwealth of Learning, we have the World Bank, and several of our partners that will be at this conference. And we want the CCNPATA to be a part of this. We are committed to a duty of care. Please engage us. We have a simple email, and in fact, all of the emails and phone numbers of every executive within the Caribbean Examinations Council is actually online. So we are only a phone call away. Thank you.
Thank you very much for that powerful presentation, Drs. Ali and Manning. At this point, I invite Mrs. Landis to join us. And I will open the floor for questions as well. As part of the presentation, we heard about the factors motivating reform. We heard about the strategic initiatives that CXC will undertake. We learned more about the key drivers for strategic positioning, as well as the proposed regional mechanism for parental involvement. It is now your turn to share your thoughts on all of what was presented here this morning. So the floor is open.
Okay, good morning, colleagues. Kendall Kodras from St. Lucia. I just wanted to get a better appreciation in terms of the process for strategic repositioning of CXC. And I also wanted to put in a plug in here also, because I've been thinking about it, even looking at our own local context in St. Lucia, looking at what we always coin as teaching to the test, and looking at the disconnect between assessment and curriculum, and noting over the years the changes to the syllabuses or syllabi, the involvement of the countries in terms of what goes into the new curriculum. I just wanted to get a better appreciation as to the processes and the level of involvement of countries in this. Thank you.
Thank you for your question, P.S. Kudra. Good morning again to all. So I'll begin, and then my colleagues will chip in accordingly. So with respect to the strategic repositioning, we recognize at CXC that while we would have come out of a pandemic where there were a number of issues that would have been surfaced, particularly as it related to learning poverty and the issues associated with learning recovery, that there was a need for us to consider some of those impacts. The data has been coming out between 2020 and 2023 in relation to research that was done during that period. And so for us, we had to embrace that data and look at also other policy changes that were happening across the region. So we've taken cognizance of not just the CARICOM HRD 2030 strategy, and the considerations of member states as they were also revising their own national sector plans and their policies, and those priorities were considered in our review. What I would dare say is that there are several aspects of transformation that needed to be considered as we talk about issues associated with qualifications, advancements, and developments globally, the issues associated with the labor market, and the future of jobs, and where that was headed or is heading across the world, the issues associated with the types of qualifications that are offered, and the need for more flexible pathways and to create opportunities for persons to learn and access opportunities for learning and credentialing. We looked at also the digital transformation, where Dr. Manning did not have an opportunity, but she can explain. And one of our colleagues is here in the room who helps us or works with that in that area. CXC has been on a course of e-transitioning. And so in that course of e-transitioning, there were several things we had taken into account as it relates to digital skills and digital processes that needed to be accounted for. So there are several points of interest that CXC had to take into account. Our strategic plan was crafted in 2019 for 2020 to 25. And so a midterm review took place that brought all of these issues to the fore, that caused us to rethink, to identify our philosophy that would have needed to be changed. We brought those forward to our council, and we've been engaging in some of those areas. We have focused largely on subject-based education and assessment through our syllabuses. We have now transitioned into skills-based qualifications and assessments. Now, that transition is not an easy transition because you're dealing with member states where there are schools that have already, and where there are teachers who matter, and parents too, who are part of the ecosystem, who are already prepared for and have been engaging the old or traditional model. So as we progress to a competency-based education, training, and assessment system, we have to ensure that we phase the subject-based approach gradually out and phase the skills-based approach gradually in, so that teachers, parents, learners, governments, all stakeholders in schools at the school level are prepared for that transition. We have and I would just say this and pass the mic on to my colleague to speak further in terms of our 2026-30 strategic plan and what we're looking at. But we've had the opportunity to look at particularly the CVQ system and the gains that we've had, our CPA model and the gains we've had in certain territories where competency-based education, training, and assessment is concerned, and also our CCSLC at the lower secondary school. So all of those factors where there have been positive results and where there have been also challenges, we have been noting, and as Dr. Manning indicated, we have been taking a continuous improvement-based approach to remedy some of the ills that we've experienced as we transition. Thank you.
Thank you. Now, at the heart of our strategic plan is that of our stakeholders. And key to our development and enhancement is that of our relationship management. While CXC focus on people, tools, technology, we saw it fitting that the ultimate aim of the organization is to ensure we are focused on improving stakeholder relationship. And throughout our strategic evaluation, monitoring, and doing our mid-year review, we recognize the importance of ensuring that we are providing the necessary feedback to our stakeholders. We continue to focus on the stakeholder, and groups such as the NNPTA, the CCNPTA is critical, and so that is part of our ongoing initiatives as we talk about strategic engagement, as we talk about educational transformation. So we know we cannot do it without you, and so partnership is critical, and we continue to ensure as we craft our 2026 to 2030 strategic plan, we have critical initiatives to drive stakeholder engagement. Yes, and one of the other areas for 26 to 2030 is that of our stakeholder engagement relating to our corporate social responsibility. So you'll be seeing highlights, you will be hearing from us in terms of what are the different initiatives we'll be doing in terms of reaching out to our stakeholders. And for 2026, the first initiative will be led by Dr. Ali, coming out of the Western Zone office.
Okay, thank you very much. Do we have any questions, any other questions coming from the audience? Okay, yes, Minister?
Right, thank you. David Andrew, Minister for Education, Grenada. There is often the perception that there is a gap between what several of us as ministers and policymakers are trying to pursue, and in some cases what CXC seems to be pursuing. And that should not be, because CXC is in fact a creature of our doing as a CARICOM region, as heads of states, to serve the mandate of the CARICOM region. But that perception obviously exists to the point where people feel, and sometimes you hear people say very negative things about CXC and what they are pursuing or not pursuing. I want to commend CXC though for their agility in proposing CTEC and the micro-credentialing and that modular format that I do believe will assist in making assessment a lot more effective across the region. But what is CXC's mechanism to more seamlessly align what policymakers are pursuing across our CARICOM region and what they actually do so that that gap becomes less existent? How is CXC treating with that, and what is your mechanism as it exists?
Thank you for that question, Honorable Minister. From a policy perspective, one of the very important points is the labor market demand, because I think we all want to ensure that nationally and regionally we're meeting those requirements. And you meet a demand when you are aware of that demand. And so what CXC is doing is to ensure that we speak not only to the ministries, but to employers directly on the ground. So yes, we do our surveys and so on, but we want to understand exactly what is needed to make that dial shift. So one of the reasons why CTEC came around as a part of the process is the hearing and understanding and the direct information shared, whether through research or otherwise, because we are aware that some countries really may not have all the information in terms of labor market demand. And so what we are trying to do is to ensure that that information is shared with CXC. In addition to that, you then have technical persons within the country, and each ministry provides a mandate. And that mandate is what we have to translate as a CARICOM entity. And in translating that mandate, what we have to do is to work with the persons. We do it. I think the question was, as part of the question that P.S. Kudra asked, who within the territories are we engaging? So within each territory, we engage the technical, whether at the higher education level, whether the teachers, because they are part of the persons who help to form and create the qualifications that are offered at CXC and the syllabus that is developed. Number 3, in relation to the persons who are involved in designing the qualification. So you have, we mentioned the CVQ, which is a CARICOM, also approved by CARICOM. We also make sure that each of those qualifications and the assessments that's done, it's done in a regional context. So the dissonance or perceived dissonance, let us say, that exists is what we're trying to close. And we have to close it at 2 levels, we believe. And it's a dialogue. We close it at a regional level by creating new products that will answer and respond to the region. But we have to close it at the national level because there are national requirements. And in order to do that, we directly engage through what we created as our product innovation model. In other words, a new way of creating new qualifications that are specific to each territory. So what we want to do is to shift, and we are saying, we are saying that Grenada, for example, has particular requirements outside of what is offered at the regional level and those products. You may say that you need something specific. Well, CXC, as we did for the BVI and can do for others, work specifically with the territory to ensure that we create that response to close that gap. And so that is one of the transformative way of making sure that we have those skills. Granted, I must say, by closing, that we have to also advise, guide, and as we share with international bodies, because remember, our students and children, they are not only employed and they do not only go to school within the region. they go other places. And so as they transition to other locations, our responsibility is also to ensure that the credentials that are offered are also acceptable, not only at the national level in terms of a qualification framework, the regional level, but also acceptable in terms of the movement of our mobility of our people across the globe. I'm hoping that.
Madam Chair, can I just give a quick comment in relation to that? Thank you. Minister, thank you for your question. I also wanted to put a plug in here for the work that is being done by both the OECS Commission and the CARICOM Secretariat as it relates to aligning strategy and policy across the region. Part of the challenge that we as an organization would have experienced, and I think Dr. Manning alluded to that in her comment, has to do with prioritization across the region. We've had a CARICOM HRD strategy that was established, which CXC has looked at to determine what the priorities were for the region. We've had countries looking to their national sector plans and trying to articulate that within a regional context, either through the OECS as a sub-region or the wider CARICOM region. So if I use the word dissonance, which is the word that my colleague used, the dissonance or disconnect really exists between what CARICOM has as through appointed and agreed upon by COSOD through strategy and policy that impacts agencies such as CXC. The extent to which those things are clarified, those things are explicit, those things are indicated in terms of transformational initiatives that the region is or has agreed upon as areas for endeavor. It provides direct cues to not just the member states, but to regional authorities like CXC. So we look forward to the agencies of CARICOM and the OECS to prioritize what the region needs, give us very clear cues. We have been taking a very proactive approach, in my view, at the level of the agency of CXC, with our council, of which all governments have representation, all stakeholders, teachers and other bodies have representation, but we really need to get that from you. If we continue to get certain perspectives enunciated by member states, which could be regarded as ideas, possible solutions, or even complaints, but they're not coordinated in a mechanistic way to provide clear-cut solutions or recommendations to Council, it will create that dissonance. So we are asking you, honorable ministers, colleagues all, to provide that data, provide that information to support us as we make our decisions and we act, working together with you to support what you need in the region. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Ali. Any other questions? Yes, Minister King.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. I welcome what I would consider to be the attempt by CXC to reposition itself, and if you like, to go further and say the reform that is taking place within CXC. And I hope that we will keep on this trajectory. I say this because it is wonderful to talk about the transformation of education and so on. But we are not going to be successful unless every stakeholder is involved. And CXC is a critical stakeholder. I want to remind us that one of the major challenges that face this Caribbean region for a long time, and I thought that we were a bit unresponsive for too long. I'm talking about our performance in mathematics. And that's why I'm saying I'm really welcoming, although I might not be at that activity in Jamaica, but I know our country will be represented. But I take a special interest in mathematics. And I went back to your very first examination in 1979 to this present time. And persons who look at the data will see that there are many countries where you can count on one hand the number of times we exceeded 50% pass rate in mathematics. And when we look at the broader Caribbean region, perhaps the same number of times we exceed 50% pass rate. And I know this is something that has engaged us at the level of the OECS, Ministers of Education, I must say at the broader CARICOM level. Now, we are developing some critical tools as we move forward. And I was particularly interested in the use now of the analytics in terms of how you analyze your education, your exams, and share the information. And this is the point I want to come with. It is absolutely necessary that you share information with us. And I'm not talking about, how I put it. In other words, I don't think the sharing of the information in the past has been significant. I'm not talking about where you do the general comments on the respective subjects. Okay? I am speaking about giving us detailed analysis of the respective subjects. And coming back to mathematics, I believe that where mathematics is concerned, we should have a detailed analysis of the students' performances. And it must not be in libraries. When I say libraries, in CXC libraries, and I'm only using libraries as a storing point. We who are at the center of making decisions should have that information. And I know we have been working hard, and I must commend CXC for its response. But I'll tell you, it was like pulling teeth to get CXC to respond positive. And I'm speaking about at the level of the OECS, where we were seeking, and in many respects, still seeking certain information. But as I'm seeing a positive response, and we have to continue that way. Because I go back to my central point. We are not going to be successful in our efforts to reform not only education, but also to reform our societies and to take them to the level of development that we want if we do not have education playing a critical role. And for education to play a critical role, our assessment body, CXC, must also provide the necessary information that would inform decisions as we go forward.
Thank you very much, Minister King.
Very
Thank you. I see there's someone.
I'll be very brief. Michelle Brathwaite, Vice President of the Caribbean Disability Network. My question is, does CXC collect and analyze data on neurodiverse learners who are performing compared in terms of their peers, their performance in terms of their peers? So for neurodiverse learners, would you have collected data to look at how they would perform in the exams in relation to their peers? Thank you.
Dr. Manning?
So in relation to research, that's further research that can be done. We know, and as Minister King highlighted, the need for that deep dive is not only we do the deep dive, but in terms of the sharing of the information. I think that's what I'm hearing very clearly, which is why we embarked on this approach, not only at the conference level, but we are creating a journal also, just to share that. And as well as even direct reports to parents if they need it. We're creating new opportunities for persons to have a deep dive and understand what is happening at various levels. So whether you're looking at it per child, whether you're looking at it per center, whether you're looking at it nationally, whether you're looking at it regionally, that is data that will be provided. We created what we call our unique candidate number, and that is what will allow us to do some of the kind of research. I'm happy to say that the ministries are working with us in making this kind of transformation and to facilitate this kind of data that will be provided.
Okay, thank you.
Dr. Bradshaw, may I just also elaborate on one related point?
Yeah, just very quickly.
Right. So the CXC's governance model, its agreement, has been established with respect to supporting data provisions directly to member states. We recognize that there are regional bodies and other actors who need to access data, and we've been working on particular protocols around which that is to be provided. So they are not just the OECS Commission, CARICOM Secretariat, for example, where there's data that will be required to do that type of analysis. Our CXC Data Intelligence Gateway is accessible to ministries of education, and they can collect, analyze, and produce and reproduce their data in real time from what we have provided through that portal for every government. But we recognize that other entities, such as research institutions, research active institutions, like universities and others, and our development partners, are asking for data access. So we are actually looking at the protocols around that. We've started with the universities because there are a number of graduate students who are routinely doing research, and we want them to publish and publish well, working collaboratively with us. Final point I want to make, yes, but of course the point is that there's a data release process, or data approval and release process that is required, where every member state has to grant that access. We are going to work on that to see how we could circumvent some of those issues as best as possible at the nation-state level, at the member state level, but that's critical to be noted. The final point I want to make, and Dr. Manning alluded to it, CXC, we have agreed, and we are actually this year launching our Caribbean Journal of Educational Assessment. Our interim chair is a lady who presented before us, and so she is in the room. The objective really is for us to ensure that any research that is done from the conference could be published in that forum. We are also looking at other avenues for teachers and others who are practitioners to have another avenue for them to publish their works that may not be scholarly but practice-based. And so that will be discussed later on, and we are working to create those channels for persons to work who are preparing materials to present that in that space, a digital space, and we are hoping to collaborate with the universities that sit on council to do that. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Ali. We're now going to wrap up this session, and I must say I had a couple questions myself, but I can't ask all of them now. I'll ask you privately. But we are at a Transforming Education Symposium. And you can't have a Transforming Education Symposium without having CXC. Now, I was in the ministerial caucus yesterday and part of this morning, and I must say that the ministers are forging ahead with their transformation agendas. It is imperative that CXC, in terms of transformation, is in step, aligned with where the ministers are taking their countries. I heard you speak about the structures that you have in place. You have the NPTA, you have the feedback mechanisms through the portals, but I think what needs to be made absolutely clear is where does the rubber meet the road and how that rubber meets the road. How do you know that the feedback that you're getting is actually what is required to bring about the changes that you need to make as an assessment body? Dr. Ali, I heard you say something a little earlier. You said that CXC is an agency of the member states. So I must commend you, I must say, because I remember in the recent past, there was a bit of a chasm between CXC, ministers, parents, and so on, but you were seeking to close that gap. I commend you for that. But what needs to happen is that the information that you get needs to be the correct information so that you do what is necessary and do right by the children of the region. In terms of feedback, sharing with us, that mechanism must also be open. Who are you sharing with? Is the information getting to the right people? But all in all, I commend you for making the presentation. Please give them another round of applause. And I thank you also for the questions and comments that you made. Because as I said before, it takes an entire village. And these discussions, I don't see them as just talk, but we have to be able to come away with something so that we can grow, so that we can be better as a region. So ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much.